Everyone knows Darwin changed biology. Almost nobody talks about what actually happened in his head between 1835 and 1838. The 5-week stop at volcanic islands, the birds he mixed up. The moment in October 1838 when population math cracked evolution wide open. How does a man go from collecting specimens to redrawing the entire tree of life? What pushed him from curious naturalist to the architect of a theory that still rattles churches and classrooms? And why did it take him 23 years to publish? Santiago last, where he spent an entire week. He was there to collect rocks and specimens, not to have revelations. He thought the islands looked desolate, dry, crawling with giant tortoises and marine iguanas he called the most disgusting clumsy lizards he'd ever seen. He noted the tortoises. Locals told him you could tell which island a tortoise came from by its shell shape. He didn't label his specimens by island. That mistake would haunt him. The birds caught his attention, but not the finches. He collected mockingbirds. 3 different islands, 3 different mockingbirds. He noted the differences. He labeled them by island. But he thought they were just varieties. The finches? He thought they were blackbirds, wrens, and finches from different families. He didn't bother labeling them by island. His servant Sims Covington shot most of the birds. Captain Robert Fitzroy collected birds too. So did the ship's steward Harry Fuller. They labeled their specimens better than Darwin did. That saved him later. Species might not be fixed. He was thinking about the mockingbirds, not the finches. Not yet. On January 4th, 1837, Darwin presented his bird specimens to the Zoological Society of London. 450 birds. The society gave them to John Gould, the best ornithologist in England. Gould was 32, self-taught, hungry. He set aside his paying work. 6 days later, January 10th, Gould reported back. The birds Darwin thought were blackbirds and wrens and finches from different families. They were all finches. 12 species. One remarkable new family, ground finches, all peculiar to Galapagos. The newspapers ran the story. The mockingbirds he'd labeled by island were separate species, not varieties. 25 of 26 land birds from Galapagos were new species found nowhere else, but closely related to South American birds, different islands, different species. From their specimens, Darwin reconstructed which finches came from which island. The pattern held: separate islands, separate species, all related, all descended from mainland ancestors. Species changed. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Darwin Correspondence Project at Cambridge University, published in their ongoing scholarly edition since 1974, and the complete Darwin archive at Cambridge University Library, which houses his original notebooks, including Notebook B with the Tree of Life, sketch from July 1837. These aren't Wikipedia summaries. These are primary sources cross-checked with modern paleontology and ornithology databases. Now back to the information. Dead ends, marked with perpendicular lines. Living species continuing upward. Above it, he wrote 2 words, I think. It was Darwin working out a specific problem. How many species can exist at once? How do new ones form without overpopulating the planet? Extinction. Old species die. New species branch off. The numbers balance. From opening the notebook to drawing the tree, that's not slow, that's not cautious, that's a mind on fire. He talked to gardeners, dog breeders, sheep farmers, his barber, anyone who worked with living things and noticed patterns. But nature doesn't choose. Nature doesn't want anything. How does selection happen without a selector? Death, the checks that keep population from exploding. Imagine 100,000 wedges trying to force themselves into gaps in nature, thrusting out weaker ones. Unfavorable variations die out. Over time, populations change, new species form, all without a designer, all driven by survival and reproduction. The struggle. From those 3 principles, natural selection follows. It's mathematical, it's elegant, it's ruthless. He expanded the sketch to a 230-page essay, still didn't publish. He told his wife Emma, if he died, publish it. Use £400 to get it edited and printed. That's how certain he was it mattered. That's also how certain he was it would cause a storm. Darwin's theory said species weren't created. They evolved from common ancestors, humans included. That made humans relatives of apes, of worms, of bacteria. It stripped humanity of special creation. It made life a brutal competition, no divine plan, just survival. Called it amateur, speculative, dangerous. Chambers' reputation would have been ruined if his name had been attached. Darwin watched. He stayed quiet. Without variation, natural selection stops. He couldn't explain it. He needed more evidence. Geographic distribution. He wrote letters, hundreds, thousands, to naturalists worldwide, asking questions, gathering data. He was building an argument so thorough no one could dismiss it. Then June 18th, 1858 happened. Wallace had independently arrived at natural selection. The same theory, the same mechanism. Wallace had read Malthus too. In 1858, during a malarial fever, population pressure, struggle for existence, survival of the fittest. Wallace figured it out. He'd written it down. He wanted to publish. I'm forestalled. All my originality, whatever it amounts to, will be smashed. But he didn't want to steal Wallace's priority. He offered to send Wallace's essay to any journal Wallace chose. Darwin agreed. So did Wallace after the fact. Wallace's essay from 1858. The papers were read aloud. Darwin wasn't there. His infant son had just died. Scarlet fever. The meeting drew little reaction. The president of the Linnean Society said later that 1858 hadn't been marked by any revolutionary discoveries. He was wrong. He started July 20th, 1858, on holiday in Sandown, Isle of Wight. He wrote from memory, sending manuscripts to friends for checking. By early October, the abstract was growing. He realized it would be a small volume. It would have to be published separately. By mid-March 1859, he was thinking of publication. He sent the manuscript to publisher John Murray. Murray accepted. First printing, 1,250 copies. On November the 24th, 1859, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection was published. It sold out the first day. More complex than the Notebook B sketch. Roman numerals marking species, dotted lines showing descent, thick lines for successful lineages, thin lines dying out, horizontal lines marking time, thousands of generations. The tree shows divergence, common ancestors branching into multiple species, some lineages going extinct, others thriving. It's the visual argument for descent with modification. He acknowledges difficulties. He knows the theory has gaps. He admits he doesn't have all the answers. He presents evidence, comparative anatomy, embryology, fossil record, biogeography, artificial selection. He builds the case slowly, methodically. He doesn't argue. He demonstrates. He lets the facts speak. Thomas Huxley, who became known as Darwin's bulldog, said he was stupid not to have thought of it himself. Others were more cautious. Charles Lyell eventually accepted it, though he struggled with human evolution. Alfred Russel Wallace accepted it, but thought higher mental faculties required divine intervention. The scientific community shifted quickly. By Darwin's death in 1882, evolution by natural selection was orthodoxy. The religious backlash was fierce. The book challenged literal interpretation of Genesis. It removed humanity from the center of creation. It made life a struggle, not a gift. Bishop Samuel Wilberforce debated Huxley at Oxford on June 30th, 1860. The Great Debate. Wilberforce asked Huxley if he was descended from an ape on his grandmother's or grandfather's side. Huxley replied he'd rather be descended from an ape than a man who used his intellect to obscure truth. The crowd erupted. Evolution won in the universities. But the battle moved to churches, schools, courtrooms. It's still fought today. Our mental faculties, our morality, our social structures, all products of natural selection and sexual selection. The book was more controversial than Origin, but by then, evolution was established. Darwin had won. Analyzed in detail by historians, Sandra Herbert in her 1980 work on Darwin's early theorizing published in the Journal of the History of Biology, and David Cohn's comprehensive study of Darwin's notebooks published in 1985, examining over 4,700 pages of Darwin's notes and portfolios. These sources reveal the day-by-day development of his thinking from 1837 to 1839. Now back to the information. In 1794, Erasmus published Zoonomia, or The Laws of Organic Life. 2 volumes, medical text, pathology, anatomy, psychology, disease classification, and buried in the chapter on generation, a proto-evolutionary theory. Erasmus suggested all warm-blooded animals arose from one living filament. The great first cause endued it with animality, with the power of acquiring new parts, with the faculty of continuing to improve by its own inherent activity, and of delivering down those improvements by generation to posterity. Erasmus believed in common ancestry, descent with modification, inheritance of acquired characteristics. He even talked about sexual selection and competition. The Temple of Nature, published posthumously in 1803, he described life emerging from the ocean, simple organisms growing larger, acquiring new forms, whales governing the seas, lions the land, eagles the air, humans appearing last, related to worms and insects and apes. Materialist evolution, no divine spark, just matter organizing itself over vast time. Revolutionary, dangerous. The Anti-Jacobin magazine published savage parodies in 1798. They linked Erasmus's ideas to French Revolution radicalism, atheism, social upheaval. One political cartoon showed Erasmus carrying a basket of Jacobin flowers labeled Zoonomia. The Vatican banned Zoonomia. Erasmus became controversial, dangerous. His ideas were too radical for Georgian England. He studied zoonomia at Edinburgh University when he was a medical student in 1826. He read it again after returning from the Beagle voyage. On the first page of his first transmutation notebook, Notebook B, Charles wrote a note about zoonomia. His grandfather's ideas were in his head: common ancestry, competition, sexual selection, struggle for existence. Erasmus wrote that the world resembles one great slaughterhouse, one universal scene of rapacity and injustice. That sounds like natural selection. But Erasmus lacked the mechanism. He thought animals acquired traits through lust, hunger, and security and passed them on. Lamarckian inheritance, not natural selection. In his autobiography, written in 1876, he admitted that hearing evolutionary views early in life may have favored his upholding them in Origin. But in the historical sketch added to the third edition of Origin, Charles barely credited Erasmus. He relegated him to a footnote. Said Erasmus anticipated the erroneous grounds of opinion and the views of Lamarck. That's harsh, unfair. Why? Charles knew his grandfather's reputation: radical, dangerous, atheist. If Charles linked his theory to Erasmus, critics would dismiss it as inherited radicalism. Old wine in new bottles, politically motivated. Charles needed his theory to stand on evidence, not family legacy. So he downplayed Erasmus, distanced himself. It worked. Origin was judged on its merits, but the debt remains. It was messy. Galapagos gave him clues: the mockingbirds, the tortoises. Different islands, different forms. But he didn't realize their significance until Gould identified the finches. That revelation in January and March 1837 triggered the transmutation notebooks. Darwin spent 18 months gathering ideas, reading, thinking, sketching. The tree appeared in July 1837, 1 month in. But the mechanism eluded him until September 1838. Malthus gave him the key: population pressure, struggle, selection. Wallace's letter forced his hand. Without Wallace, would Darwin have published? Maybe not for years, maybe never. Fear of controversy, fear of imperfection, fear of his grandfather's shadow. Branches reaching in all directions, some thriving, some dying, all connected. The tree is still the best way to visualize the history of life. The Galapagos finches became textbook examples. Adaptive radiation, one ancestral species arriving on the islands, finding empty niches, evolving into multiple species. 13 on Galapagos, 1 on Cocos Island. Different beaks for different foods. Ground finches with heavy beaks for crushing seeds. Tree finches with thinner beaks for insects. Cactus finches with long beaks for probing cactus flowers. Warbler finches with needle beaks for tiny insects. Even vampire finches on Wolf and Darwin Islands. They drink blood from seabirds when seeds are scarce, pecking at the base of wing feathers. The seabirds don't resist. They tolerate it. The finches evolved to exploit every available resource. Recorded survival and reproduction. They witnessed natural selection in real time. During the drought of 1977, only birds with large beaks survived. They could crack the tough seeds that remained. Small-beaked birds starved. In one generation, the population shifted. Average beak size increased. Evolution happening in months, not millions of years. The grants documented it, measured it, published it. Natural selection confirmed. The finches are still evolving, still adapting. Hybridization happens. Different species interbreed on some islands. Gene flow between species. The tree isn't just branching, it's reticulating. Genes moving horizontally. That complicates the picture. But it doesn't break the tree. It adds detail, nuance. The history of life is messier than Darwin imagined. More dynamic, more interconnected. But it's still a history, still a tree. Darwin's genius wasn't just the theory. It was recognizing the pattern, seeing the tree in the data. The notebooks show his mind at work, questions piled on questions. What if species aren't fixed? What if they change? What causes change? What limits change? Why do some species go extinct? How do new ones form? Why are island species related to mainland species but different? Why do embryos of different species look similar? Why do useless structures persist? Whale hip bones, snake leg remnants, human tail bones. Shared inheritance, not shared design. The mental shift required was enormous, from stasis to change, from design to descent, from hierarchy to genealogy, from purpose to process. Life isn't climbing toward perfection, it's branching into available niches, adapting to local conditions, surviving, reproducing. There's no goal, no endpoint, just endless variation and selection, generation after generation over deep time. Charles Lyell's Principles of Geology, published 1830 to 1833. Lyell argued Earth was old, millions of years, shaped by slow processes, erosion, deposition, uplift. Darwin read Lyell on the Beagle, saw evidence everywhere. Fossils of marine shells high in the Andes. The land had risen. slowly, over eons. Darwin witnessed an earthquake in Chile in February 1835. The ground rose several feet. Mussel beds lifted above the tide line. If earthquakes can raise land feet at a time, how high could it rise over millions of years? Deep time became real. The Galapagos gave him the example. His notebooks gave him the space to think. The tree gave him the picture. How they adapt, how they sense and respond. The tree was the framework. The books were the ornaments. Grew climbing plants, experimented with seeds. He made Downhouse a laboratory. His family helped. His children collected specimens, recorded observations. Darwin turned his estate into a research station. More defensive, some changes weakened it. He tried to address every objection. That diluted the clarity. The first edition is the best, the purest expression of the theory. Later editions are compromised. Some scientists preferred other mechanisms: Lamarckian inheritance, directed variation, saltationism, sudden jumps. Natural selection seemed too slow, too random. But the tree held. Common ancestry was established. The mechanism would be refined later. Population genetics in the 1920s and 30s mathematicized natural selection. Ronald Fisher, J.B.S. Haldane, Sewall Wright. They showed selection could work. It could drive evolution. The modern synthesis in the 1940s united Darwin's natural selection with Mendelian genetics. Evolution became mathematically rigorous, experimentally testable. The tree grew stronger. Crick and Watson, double helix, genetic code. Suddenly evolution had a physical basis. Mutations are changes in DNA. Selection acts on those changes. Evolution is change in allele frequencies. Molecular biology confirmed common ancestry. All life uses DNA, RNA, proteins, the same genetic code, 20 amino acids, 4 nucleotide bases. Universal, but that's not coincidence. That's inheritance from a common ancestor. The tree goes back to the origin of life, 3.8 billion years ago, maybe earlier. 150 million years ago. Feathers and teeth and claws, half bird, half dinosaur. The tree predicted it. Reality delivered it. The distributions match the tree. Marsupials in Australia, placentals in Asia, the continents drifted, populations isolated. Speciation followed. The tree explains it. They inherit developmental programs from common ancestors. The programs are conserved. Mutations modify them. But the basics remain. Notochord, pharyngeal arches, tail. All vertebrate embryos have them. Fish keep them. Humans lose the tail, modify the arches. The embryonic similarities reflect the tree, shared ancestry, inherited development. Same structure, different functions. Why? Common ancestor, inherited forelimb, modified by selection. The bones are homologous, they correspond. They tell the same story, descent from a common ancestor with that forelimb structure. The tree predicts homology, reality confirms it. 98.8% identical. Chromosome 2 in humans is a fusion of 2 chimp chromosomes. You can see the fusion site, telomeres in the middle, centromeres doubled. The fusion happened after the split. Humans have 23 chromosome pairs, chimps have 24. The tree predicted the relationship. Genetics confirmed it. If you found a mammal fossil in Precambrian rock, 600 million years old, the tree would break. Mammals evolved 200 million years ago. They can't be older, no such fossil exists. Every fossil fits the tree. The sequence is perfect, simple to complex, aquatic to terrestrial. The progression matches the tree. Found the mechanism, built the case, published the theory, changed the world, but he stood on shoulders. Lyell gave him deep time. Malthus gave him the struggle. His grandfather gave him the idea. Gould gave him the species. Wallace gave him the deadline. Emma gave him support. His children gave him help. The Beagle gave him the world. Every museum has it. The American Museum of Natural History has a hall dedicated to it. The tree of life, 92 feet wide, glowing, branching, species connected. Bacteria to blue whales, fungi to fruit flies. All related, all descended. The tree visualizes 4 billion years. It's humbling, it's awe-inspiring, it's true. Achievement in biology. He didn't just describe life, he explained it. He showed us our place in nature. We're not separate, not special, not created apart. We're part of the tree, one branch among millions, connected to everything else, descended from ancient ancestors, bound by common inheritance. That realization changed everything. It still does. 1 month from opening notebook B to drawing the tree. That's not decades of pondering. That's a flash of understanding. The mechanism took longer, 18 months. But the core idea? 1 month. He saw it, he drew it, he knew it was right. Then he spent 20 years making sure nobody could doubt it. In his notebooks, the organizing principle, the pattern beneath the diversity, the history written in anatomy and fossils and distributions. Darwin saw the tree. He mapped it. He gave it to us. We're still exploring its branches. Relatives of animals. The Archbishop of Canterbury called it degrading. Thomas Huxley defended it. Evidence in Man's Place in Nature, 1863. Huxley showed the anatomical similarities. Humans are apes, modified apes, bipedal apes, big-brained apes, but apes. The tree said so. The evidence confirmed it. The resistance was fierce, but the tree held. Compared to chimp genomes, gorilla genomes, orangutan genomes, every gene tells the story. Humans and chimps split 6 million years ago. We're that close, that recent. The tree from 1868 was right. The molecular tree matches it. Darwin's primate tree holds. We're part of the African great ape lineage. No doubt, no ambiguity. The tree is real. Test. Revise. He showed how to do science, not with authority, not with revelation, with evidence, with reason, with humility. He admitted ignorance, acknowledged uncertainty, welcomed correction. That's how science progresses. Darwin set the standard. We still follow it. That shift in perspective affects everything. Medicine. We understand disease as evolution. Pathogens evolve resistance. We evolve defenses. It's an arms race. Agriculture. We understand breeding as artificial selection. Crops evolve. Pests evolve. We guide the process. Conservation. We understand extinction as loss of branches. Irreversible. Tragic. Every species is part of the tree. Losing one diminishes all. We're not separate from nature. We're part of it. Our actions affect other branches. Habitat destruction, climate change, pollution. We're pruning the tree, cutting branches. Some will never grow back. The tree records our impact. Fossils will show the great extinction, the human extinction. The 6th mass extinction, we're in it now. Species disappearing at 1,000 times the background rate. The tree is losing diversity, losing complexity. We did that. Darwin's tree teaches us humility. We're not the goal, not the endpoint, not the crown of creation. We're one branch, recent, fragile, mortal. Our species is 200,000 years old. Bacteria have been here for 3 billion years. They'll be here long after we're gone. The tree puts us in perspective. We matter, but we're not everything. We're part of something larger, older, deeper. That's the tree's gift: connection, belonging, history. The mental process Darwin went through wasn't just intellectual. It was emotional, spiritual. He struggled with it. The theory destroyed his faith. He'd trained for the clergy. He believed in design, in purpose, in God. The tree took that away. It replaced design with descent, purpose with process, God with natural selection. That hurt. He delayed publication partly from fear of hurting others, especially Emma. She was devout. The theory challenged her faith. Darwin knew it. He agonized. But he published anyway. Truth mattered more than comfort. That's worth something. That's worth everything. How to change your mind. The final revelation isn't in Origin, it's in Darwin's last book. The formation of vegetable mold through the action of worms, with observations on their habits. 1881, 1 year before he died. A book about earthworms, how they turn soil, bury objects, create mold. It sold better than Origin. Why? Because Darwin made worms interesting. He showed their importance, their impact. Over time, worms transform landscapes, bury ruins, build soil, small actions, repeated, accumulated, over decades, centuries. The principle is the same: small changes, deep time, large effects. That's evolution. That's the tree. Darwin saw it everywhere, even in worms. The tree he sketched in July 1837 has grown into the most comprehensive framework in biology. Every new discovery fits it. Every experiment supports it. Every observation confirms it. The tree is the fact of evolution. Natural selection is the mechanism. Together they explain life. Darwin gave us both. From mixed-up bird specimens to the tree of life, from careful observation to intellectual revolution. That's the mental process. That's the journey. That's Darwin. He changed how we see ourselves, how we see nature, how we see life. The tree is his gift. We live in its branches. We breathe its air. We are its children. That's the truth Darwin mapped, and it changed biology forever.